What up, world? It's your boy Dr. Black. Now, I did this video on TikTok, but because TikTok's short, I needed to make a longer version of this video so that we can get it all in one place, all at one time. So we'll go through the video. It's a video about, well, just watch the video with me. I'll pause it periodically. We'll go through it, and hopefully I'll start a conversation and you'll share your opinions also.
A man asks you what you bring to the table. What did you just hear him say?
Ideally, a man is already supposed to own a table before he approaches a woman, and that table is supposed to be flowing with milk and honey for the woman of his dreams to come in and...
All right. So the question was, when a man asks you what you bring to the table, what do you hear him say? And this young lady is starting out where I feel is very wrong, because she says a man is supposed to already have a table filled. Metaphorically, that means he's supposed to be financially secure before he approaches a woman. My first objection to this is, what if you're a young man in college, like many people starting out dating? Where would you find this table full of milk and honey that you would be giving to anyone? Secondly, why do you have to give all you have to someone? In this case, why does a man have to give all he has to a woman? And here's the bigger point. If the table is flowing with milk and honey, and as in her statement she says, for the woman of his dreams, then how do you get it the first time you meet him? So she's starting out with all these contradictions. A man is supposed to have a table full of milk and honey, even though obviously people in college date, and it's not a reasonable expectation to say that a young man in college is supposed to have a table of milk and honey or have himself financially established. He's going to college to get there. And if he's talking to another college woman, then he's supposed to be giving everything he has to a girl who also isn't supposed to have much of anything. Very few of us have our life financially secure in college. And then she put in the caveat that's critical, the woman of his dreams. So what happens to all the women that come before the woman of his dreams? How does a table of milk and honey affect them? It doesn't. The initial premise is flawed and absurd and ridiculous. But she goes on to put her foot even further down her throat. Let's listen.
Joy. So right from the beginning, that question lets me know that this man ain't got shit to offer me. Because what was the basis of your attraction to me? Why were you attracted to me in the first place, approached me, and initiated contact?
All right. So now she goes on to more idiotic stereotypes, suggesting that the only way that you can come in contact with a partner, a potential partner, is if you approach them. Now, I understand there's a traditional aspect here. This young lady is likely African based on her accent, and maybe she comes from a very conservative, traditional culture where she believes that the only men she can date is if the man first approaches her. Then she also turns around and believes that he has to approach her and he has to have everything. If you are a traditional woman and you have these types of idiotic traditional beliefs, what you're saying is, and this is very important, that you are willing to be a submissive and you don't get to make any decisions. You have no power in the relationship. Because think about it. If the man has everything and does everything, if by the metaphor of this story, his table is full of milk and honey, he's financially secure, and he approaches you, he's attracted to you, and your question to her is, what do you bring? And she says, don't ask me that. What you're doing is admitting you don't want any power, you don't have any power, you're not interested in power. And that used to work 100, 200, 300 years ago, traditionally. But the women of today are different than their grandmothers. As I've said many times on my TikTok, and I've said many times, unless you're committed to being your grandmother, which is virtually impossible, you can't live your life by grandma's philosophies or these traditional philosophies that suggest that the woman doesn't have to have everything or anything other than her looks and maybe her ability to make babies, but the man is supposed to do everything. If the man is doing everything, you're going to run into problems like I said, you have no power. He makes all the decisions. You have to follow his lead. You have to be submissive to him. And part of that includes him having more than one wife, a couple of girlfriends, whatever, because you're starting out the relationship on this flawed premise that he has to bring everything. If he brings everything, he has the power, he makes all the decisions, and your opinion doesn't matter. By simply thinking this through, by preparing yourself, remember I said you start with yourself and work your way out. By preparing yourself to be a quality partner, your answer to that question is important. What do you bring is it should be standard. You should be excited and happy to say, this is what I bring to the table at my point in my life. Be it in college, be it as a young professional, be it as an established professional. You should be proud and happy to say what you bring to the table and not judge a person based on them asking you that. This is very idiotic in my opinion, because if you go to a job interview, remember we're taking business principles that relate to romance and overlapping them. If you go to a job interview and they ask you, what do you bring to our company? You will be excited and proud to tell that company what you bring. You've been preparing your life to have something to bring to the table in this professional setting. But if a man asks you on a date and about what you bring to the relationship, and you get upset with him and knock him down and criticize him for that question, you are setting yourself up for failure. And again, if you're a traditional woman, if you're a feminist, it's not a feminist. If you're a person who wants to be a submissive, I'm probably not appealing to you. But to the larger number of women out there who failed at being a submissive, who gave a man all the power in the relationship and he threw her to the side, like men have always done traditionally, and now you're out here in the world trying to figure things out. Come to me and listen to what I'm saying. It's about how you start. Start with taking care of yourself. Start with being something. Start with establishing who you are, and then go into the relationship proud to answer this very simple question. What do you bring to the table? Yes, you have to see what the man brings. We all have to. The man has to see what the woman brings. The woman has to see what the man brings. But neither of us can be upset or criticizing the other for this basic, elementary first date question. Let's continue with the video.
I have never asked a man what he brings to the table because I know exactly what I want, and I make my own observations from the first few encounters, from the first few interactions, first few phone calls,
Here we go with more contradictions and absurdities. The man is asking at the point of her reference, right? The question was, what do you hear him say? The man is asking, what do you bring? And she says, I'll figure it out in the first few dates. What makes you think you get a first few dates? We all know the very famous saying, first impressions matter. And in this case, the man is attracted to you, so he approached you. If your answer is, I'm going to figure him out in the first few dates, you're making a false assumption that you're going to get a first few dates. If I talked to this young woman back when I was single and she was insulting to me about me asking what she brings to the table, we would not have another date. So how are you going to figure anything out? This makes no sense. You have to think things through. You really have to think it through. You get one chance for a first impression. You want to make a good impression, whether you commit to following through and continuing the relationship or not. You should always try to make your best first impression. You should always try to be your best. And criticizing someone for asking you what you bring to the table is inherently idiotic. The people who criticize or judge or are upset about this question are the people who don't have a lot to bring to the table or who lack communication skills, which are both red flags, and you need to not date these kind of people anyway. Let's continue.
few dates, first few hours of talking, I can already make my own observations and I can determine for myself if this is worth my time. So if you, a man, if you need me to verbally tell you what my value is and the value I have to bring into your life, it lets me know that you do not know who you are, you don't know what you want, and you don't have the level of critical thinking abilities I desire in a partner. And that is why I regard that question a stupid one. Kwejo Atta, get out of my face. Let me see road.
So she finishes the video with saying that she shouldn't have to verbally tell the man what she brings to the table. This is utter and complete nonsense. Communication is everything. You must always verbalize your position. It's your responsibility. Your words matter. And here's a really important point that I made. When you say what you bring to the table, when you say what you can bring to the table, you're setting a standard. You're setting a standard for yourself to meet. If you fail to meet that standard, that's on you. Now, I could just judge you and make an assumption about you and say you can do this, that, and the third, but what sense does that make without your input? You need to establish where you stand, and I need to see if that's acceptable to me, and as we move forward, maybe add new things that, will improve the relationship from my point of view. But it has to start with what you bring, what you know about yourself. And if you can't verbalize that, you're a child and you don't need to be dating. This is very simple stuff. You have to set your own standard. And I have to accept the standard that you set if we're going to move forward. Just hoping that we'll figure each other out as we talk and get around this discussion, get past this discussion onto other things and pretend this is not going to happen. This is how you set yourself up for failure, people. This is how you set yourself up for failure. Having a real discussion about the tertiary, surface level things. What do you bring to the table? Basic. Should happen on the first date, early off in the first date. And there's no criticism that makes any sense that it shouldn't happen. Lazy people don't want to communicate, don't want to verbalize, looking for excuses to get around the hard conversations. And if you, red flag, if you let a person like this into your life, imagine the heartaches you're going to have. Imagine when you get into a more complicated situation like how are we going to raise our children if we're coming from two different traditional bases, two different religions, two different, goals, end goals. Like I want to be a traveling husband and you want to be a stay-at-home wife and you don't want a traveling husband. How are you going to deal with that when you can't even communicate what you want in the first damn place? So to conclude this long video, she ended with the horrible, supreme contradiction when she said, if you have to ask me what I bring to the table, you don't have the critical thinking skills. She clearly doesn't understand what critical thinking means. Maybe she has a problem with her translation because maybe English is not her first language. She doesn't understand what critical thinking means. Critical thinking only works if you have two or more independent inputs. Critical thinking cannot work with only one person's point of view. The purpose of critical thinking is to give you more perspective. So yes, each individual will do critical thinking, but the data cannot come from just you. You can't be the only point of interest, the only perspective in critical thinking, or you will not achieve the goal of critical thinking, which is to have more perspective. You have to get the other person's opinions, thoughts, ideas, views, and listen to them and understand them and try to connect with them in order to make critical thinking work. So clearly she's saying you don't have critical thinking if you can't figure me out on your own. She's not a very smart person, or this is not one of her smarter moments. Critical thinking must include two or more independent sources. Lastly, 5 simple things to take from this video. 1, don't stereotype. Don't meet someone and judge a book by a cover. We know don't judge a book by a cover. You're going to end up messed up in the game. Don't waste your time or anybody else's if that's your attitude. That's part of the biggest problem with the manosphere that I can't stand, all the stereotyping. We all have to stop stereotyping. There's no need for stereotypes. Get to know the person. 2, what he brings to the table doesn't freaking matter. It's irrelevant if he's saving it, like she said, for his dream girl. You may not be the dream girl. What about all the girls that lead up to his dream girl? That need to lead up to his dream girl? If he's going to have an understanding of his dream girl, he has to know as many, girls to the extent that he needs to know them before that. So what he brings to the table is independent of what you bring to the table. And what he has on the table doesn't mean you're going to get any of it. Ladies, remember that. If you meet a high value man or a man of means or someone who's got their stuff together, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it. And you're not going to get it just because he has it. You have to still earn whatever he has on the table that you may want. 3, attraction isn't for everyone. Attraction isn't the end. Some people can look at a beautiful person and still pass them by. So if you're a lady, this happens to ladies more than men. If you're a lady and you're beautiful and you're shallow and you're hollow, you're going to be looking at videos like this, trying to figure out what went wrong. It's your responsibility to be more than your surface beauty. Just like it's a man's responsibility to be more than the money he has in the bank. 4thly, you must bring something to the table, ladies. This is what feminine teaches. You must bring something to the table because that establishes your power. If one person has it all, one person has all the power. If you have opinions, if you want your opinions to be heard and understood and respected, if you want any level of respect, you have to have something to bring to the table. No one cares about someone who has nothing. That's a life rule. I didn't make this world. I live in it. You live in it too. And if you think you're going to get a wealthy man who has it all on the table, all this milk and honey, and you're just going to be there and be cute, and you're just going to maybe make him a baby, and that's the extent of how far you've thought, you're going to fail. Wealthy men don't even do that. Think about all the wealthy men who are married, Look at Obama. He married his whole boss, his actual boss. Look at Zuckerberg. His wife has a PhD. These aren't regular women who are just cute, who work at McDonald's, and they just pick them off the street and say, hey, you're beautiful, come hang with me. That's not how it works. Wealthy, successful men with generational wealth will not choose an average, regular chick out of nowhere. You have to bring qualities to the table. You may not be able to bring the same amount of money, and you probably don't need to bring the same amount of money if he's already wealthy, but you damn sure have to be more than just a good-looking person. It doesn't last. Fifth and lastly, communication is everything. Everything, everything. That's why we have social media. That's why social media is so popular, because we're communicating with people we never met, people we'll never meet, people all around the world. We're sharing ideas. We're talking about ideas. This young lady's just sharing her ideas, and they're all nonsense. And I'm here to correct them. And that doesn't make her a bad person. It means that she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Don't listen to people like this. Anyone who encourages you not to communicate, not to work on your communication skills, not to be good at communication is encouraging you to fail. That's a red flag. One of many, okay? Maybe because I have a management degree and I understand how important communication is in the success of any business, I'm going to encourage you to have those same ideas, okay? Communication is everything. Speak. Women have been saying for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that men don't speak clearly, don't communicate their feelings, don't let them know what they need. Men, we have to do better in communicating, but women, you can't take a day off. You can't not be communicators. We all have to be good at communicating to each other because it alleviates problems. Misunderstanding are one of the core issues with problems. And a solution, a problem-solving technique is good communication. That's why we write down laws. That's why we write down rules. That's why we establish them and make sure that everyone reads them in a company. You know, it's part of your new hire packet. Here are the rules of our company so that you know when you do something wrong, you've already been warned that these are the problems, which could be different from a previous company you're in. In the same way, in a relationship, you have to have good communication skills at all times. It never stops. It never gets turned off. And the moment that you think it's okay to not have good communication, you're setting yourself up for unnecessary problems in your relationship. Life is hard enough. Let's do better. Let's think better. Let's all use our critical thinking skills to understand the other side. Men, I want us to understand women more. Women, I want you to understand us men more. That's why I'm here as a black male feminist. I hope this video helped you. One love.